Hi EJ, how's it going? Taking a look at your stuff here. So I think we spoke a little bit about it talking, but I looked through it a little more in detail. And so I understand that you want dynamic camera and stuff, but a lot of this feels like the camera's just moving all over the place all the time without. Um, I don't find it like particularly successful with how the camera is being moved. So we start off here like looking at basically like nothing, and we should really start off with something of interest, Eventually, and this isn't my strong suit, cameras. I'm gonna be upfront about that. Like, I'm an animator, a lot of the cameras get worked out for me. But if I were to try something like this with dynamic cameras and kind of like an action piece, I would definitely look for pieces where this has already been handled and done, um, to get ideas and suggestions and almost like something like a template for me to pay attention to. But these are my thoughts on maybe what you could do to make this like a little more locked down and a little bit more intelligible. So something that may be cool to do is instead of us like staring at the floor here, instead we're kind of staring here at the wall, right? And maybe we start to see almost instantly, so that we're not looking at nothing. We start to see like this character like jumping down into frame, right? And landing in a crouch with her gun. And then, she like starts to pick herself up, and then she starts to like creep the corner. And again, like this framing, we have her head cut off and everything. So I would try to keep it to be a more traditional framing where we're seeing her like she's prepped, she's locked and loaded, she's ready to go. She starts creeping the wall here. I don't know, however we want to do that with a hand out or all that. But anyways, whatever these specific posing choices are, the minute she gets her head around the wall, we see the wall like kind of explode because this character knew or heard or was prepped, right? Was ready to receive this character. Like all of a sudden I'm like caught in this and I'm intrigued and the situation is established. You know what I mean? She like jumps back because she saw it just in the nick of time and could like cover herself. And all of a sudden we have a setup of like this character coming in. We are in the same shoes as this character as she's kind of creeping the edge of the wall here because we don't know that there's a guard right there who's like bam right there, right? So all this can be done in just a simple camera pan, right? So this is where she drops in to frame. This is maybe like the edge. We see it crop over and then the camera pans over just a little bit to reveal the other figure, and that's when the wall explodes. So that's like the camera moving along one axis. You're not going to nauseate your audience and things are going to read much more clearly than if it's like constantly zooming up and back and zooming all over, right? That would suggest if you're going to show this close-up of this flashbang or smoke grenade or whatever this is, we just cut to that close-up. We don't like do this kind of weird three-dimensional okay, so the rules are kind of like quote unquote rules. You can break them when you need to, but like if you're moving the camera along the X, Y, and Z axis, or if you're rotating them along multiple axes at the same time, it's clearly like a digital camera. It doesn't emulate a real world camera, and then people just kind of zone out or tune out. It's vocabulary that they're not used to, and it doesn't necessarily feel the best. Like on that Overwatch thing, if you watch it, I'm sure they do a lot of crash zooms. I'm sure they do a lot of like pans as something flies by, but all of these things are things that you can do with a real world camera. Like the way you're using the camera now, you couldn't do this stuff easily with a real world camera. So anyways, if you want to go to something like this, I would cut to something like this, right? It has to be motivated, right? Though, so like after she comes back, after the wall gets smashed, you know, maybe we get to see this character like have a little pause, a little think, like what am I going to do now about this new problem that I have, right? And then they direct their attention down towards their belt, and then we cut to something more like this, right? Where we see them reaching in. I mean, this character doesn't have a belt or whatever, but we see them reaching in to pull something out. We really want the audience to understand what this object is that she's pulled out. So when she pulls it out, we have to show it, you know, and hopefully it's a design that's sort of like recognizable to the audience about like what's going on here. You know, and then it would be really cool to somehow show how it's activated or primed or charged. I don't know if that's pulling a pin. I'm not entirely sure how this works. That would require a little research on your part. But again, like we're coming from this close up into this camera that goes left, it goes up, it zooms back, then it goes right. It's too crazy. And I think, you know, watch stuff again. See how they use the camera, really try to analyze it, go through it frame by frame, and think about like, okay, when they have a camera move, how many axes are they moving the camera on? Where's the start and end point, and are there like these middle points? I think you'll find that it doesn't do things like this, like hardly ever, right? So we got to settle these cameras down, because it's really difficult to evaluate any of these poses and everything because we don't know exactly what the camera is that we're posing to. So I'm going to try to like not comment on the poses, but that is my strong suit, is commenting on poses. So like, you know, let's get these cameras locked down for next week. I think that's the most important thing going on here. But then also when we do get into the poses, we're going to be looking at them all the way. You know, she should be looking here to help communicate to the audience her intent and her thought and all that, instead of just staring off in the distance like she has a doll's mask or anything on that. Okay, so yeah, she throws the grenade, but we don't get to see it because the grenade release is happening below frame here. And it looks like your reference is like in slow motion or something. So I'm curious about that. If your intention for this shot is to have her do this in slow motion, you can see like the length of when you're doing it, your reference exceeds the length of your shot. So I'm not sure what you're thinking here, if this is real time or slow motion, but let's have a conversation about that. If you are planning on doing it in slow motion, I think that we need to rework exactly how we're getting into this thing here. And also, it would be super nice if she's throwing this thing, that we see this thing kind of like go, you know, and it doesn't just disappear below frame. And I'm questioning if this is really like the framing that we want to watch her throw it. So maybe we're coming from this close-up where we see her pull it out, and then maybe we go here for when she throws it, right? And then ducks behind the wall. And then again, I want to see these kind of poses and stuff resolved as like a full body pose. You know, like we're just rotating one part at a time. Like this is just moving the arm. Nothing else in the entire character moves. So like, what is her center of gravity doing? Is she creeping even more so this way? Like, is she, you know, she's going from there to there in one thing, and then the arm goes. So maybe, you know, here we can use that as an opportunity to show that her head goes from here to like here, where she's like actually looking away. Because we need to like figure out exactly what is going to be happening here, what these things are, right? At this stage when we're blocking. So yeah, here I made a note. Key the whole pose together. I think also it would make a lot of sense if her weight is shifting more over this foot, you know, so this leg would get more over here and this one, you know, she's trying to like cower away from the edge of the wall, but I feel like her shoulder could still maybe be shot by who's ever hanging out over there. So really start locking this stuff in and settling it down to get like a proper blocking pass, right? So here the explosion happens, and I assume like in your reference we're cowering down here, and then we cut to here where the camera is like zooming in on her as she cocks the gun, and then the camera goes down and to the left, and then she pops out, and then we zoom out to see this character getting shot, and then we zoom back into her face. So I feel like all of this, I was trying to figure out solutions for you, where maybe she pops up behind the wall and we need to cut to something else. And maybe what we cut to is something more similar to this, where now we're seeing her here with the gun up aiming at her opponent, and now we get to see her opponent is like coughing or blind or whatever that is. I don't know if it was smoke or flashbang. I forgot what was said. But now this is the first time we get to see what happened as a result of her actions, right? So this whole thing is for later, but I think that we need to describe this stuff to the audience and have it be like, so we maybe cut to here from that over the shoulder again instead of this. And then I was thinking, if we are over the shoulder and she shoots and you want some dynamic cameras, this is maybe a good time to go into bullet, like a bullet cam, so we see the bullet leaving the gun, right, and we're following it through the air. So we're like, the camera's zooming with the bullet. This is not the right framing. Let me scuttle this. But instead, the bullet would have to be like this, right? And then we see the person she shot at here coughing, growing like larger and larger and larger in frame until the bullet strikes that person, right? Like if that right there, like you want to save your dynamic camera moves for the super important parts of your piece. If everything here is a crazy dynamic camera move, then it all loses its potency, and by the end of it, we've seen so many dynamic camera moves that they don't have any power anymore. Like they don't look cool anymore. So that's just my advice. Maybe there's other ways you want to solve this, but we really need to get the cameras worked out and solved as soon as possible, right? But that way we see the character get shot and fall back, and it's even fine to, like, once the bullet gets near or hits the thing, like I don't know how much, whatever, but then we could cut to here and keep this kind of zoom in here. But I don't understand, like, what's the point of this? Are we showing her reaction to having shot this person? What is her reaction to having shot this person? Like, why are we zooming in on her here? Like, what's going on? I have no idea watching this, so it's hard for me to, like, give you some advice. Does she get happy? Is she like, whatever? This is just another day at the office. How are we showing it? How are we posing her to kind of show her attitude and reaction to this? Like, these are the things I want to see. Well, I did have one thought where there may be a second place that might be smart to use a dynamic camera thing, like right before we get into bullet time. If she, like, is all prepped, so she threw out the grenade, flashbang or whatever, and she's prepped here, you can do a crash zoom, like, into her eyes with your camera, right? So, like, if this is the framing of what you're doing, then we see her eyes here, and that gives us a nice camera to kind of, a nice canvas, I should say, to kind of show it going from something like this to something kind of like squinty and determined, so that we know that she's saying, like, now's the time, now's my chance to get this lady, right? So you could do a crash zoom here, like close up on the face, and that's so camera moves in general, when we're making animation, we're always like, what motivates the cut? Like, why would the director cut? Why would the cameraman stop filming here? And normally you cut on action, right? So something like this is a perfect example where it's like she like, we see her think about it and look down at her belt, and the arms go down, and right now, like, her belt or waist should be kind of like out of frame, right? So maybe you want to zoom in a little bit more on her, so that like her waist and the beginning of the skirt is out, but we see her arm going, like, we see her thinking and looking down, and then we see her arm reaching to grab something out of her belt. That is something that will motivate a camera cut here, right? Like, we motivated it because there's some action that started that now has dropped down out of frame, so now we can cut here. But the whole point of cutting here is so that the audience can get a really nice look at this flashbang or smoke grenade or whatever. So when she pulls it out, we have to pull it out in a way where the audience isn't just staring at, like, the back of her hand. but that we're kind of like showing that she pulled out this thing. So we have to make sure that she's holding it at an angle and in a way where instead of like the back of her hand covering it, we get to see like maybe this is the thumb and these are her fingers, and maybe we even want to like size this up a little bit for clarity. But you know, we can even show like maybe there's a label on it or something. Like we want to be clear in all of our actions happening here so that we can see what this new piece of information is. As an audience member, it's like, okay, we cut down here to show me that she's pulling something out. We kind of want to say, hey, no, we're down here to show specifically what she's pulling out. We really want to teach the audience. We want to show the audience what we're trying to tell them. And so now that everybody knows, it's like, okay, she's got the flashbang out. Then we can cut to, you know, we have to show her prepping, like I'm going to throw it. This is my intention. So maybe pulling out the ring. I don't know if she does it with her teeth or with whatever. However she's going to do it, think these things through. You know, you may want to even storyboard some of this stuff out before you start posing this character out, because I want you to use your time efficiently. I feel like we're a little bit behind, like where I would like you to be, because the idea has been changing so drastically from week 4 to 5 to 6 that I feel like we're still kind of pre-week 4 a little bit in where you're at as far as like planning and stuff. And so, like I said to last class, like settle in an idea and let's start working on that idea, right? So before it was like a ninja sneaking up and the camera was a character, and then it was just a ninja kind of coming up a hallway, and now we have a gunfight, right? So let's pick an idea and just make it as best as we can, and we'll settle in on it. And so, all right, so to summarize, camera angles, let's get the camera settled down, super important. Let's really think through these story beats and poses, try to understand why you're putting the camera where you are and what is motivating these cuts. And then let's reserve the really high octane camera moves for where they are deserved. And then study. If you're going to try to pull this stuff off, I would definitely recommend that you study work that you really like the Overwatch thing that you showed. Really analyze and break down how they use the camera in something like that. Try to figure out, oh, that's cool, I really like when they do that one thing, right? Like maybe, I'm sure they have crash zooms in the Overwatch thing, and say, okay, I want to use a crash zoom in my piece. Where is it most appropriate to use a crash zoom? And then pick that spot and use it. And not just like every shot can't be a crash zoom, because then by the end of it, the crash zoom is going to lose all of its potency. The audience won't care anymore. So yeah, I'm starting to repeat myself, but anyways, yeah, I look forward to seeing where this is next week, and hopefully all of my comments and notes made sense. I think this is going to potentially be like super, super cool, but we need to lock stuff down so we can really start making good progress on our blocking and make sure that the blocking and animation is going to be like top tier, top shelf, like professional work. I think that you're capable of it, and it's just like getting enough time to get high quality work done. All right. Hope you have a good week. Talk to you later.